Good evening, everyone. On behalf of India Inter Center, we welcome you all. This evening, we are going to discuss a very significant book, India Inked Elections in the World's Largest Democracy by Poonam Agrawal. We have a very distinguished speakers of panel. We have a Sri Ashok Lavasa ji, who's a former election commissioner and former finance secretary and former aviation secretary, Government of India. Welcome, sir. We have Professor Jagdeep S. Shokarji, who is a former professor IIM Ahmedabad. And we have a Sri Pawan Kheraji, who is a political analyst and media provider. And we have Anjali Bhardwaj, she is an Indian social activist. And we have author of the book, Ms. Poonam Agrawal. She is a very senior journalist. And we have Chirag Thakkarji. He is a moderator of this discussion. He is a writer and publisher. Welcome, Chirag. Thank you. Now, may I request Sri Chirag Thakkarji, is a moderator of this discussion, to start the proceeding. Okay, so we have a very distinguished Justice Lokar Sahab. He's a former Justice of Supreme Court of India. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to a stimulating and insightful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafi. I'm very glad that Justice Lokur could be part of this at the very last minute. We're very glad. Thank you for joining us. And hello, everyone. Also, thank you to all of you for making it to this very, very special evening to celebrate Poonam Agrawal's India Inked, which is the story of elections in the world's largest democracy. I am Chirag Thakkar, Poonam's editor and publisher from Bloomsbury, India. And I'm just so proud of how well this book has done in terms of the conversations it has started in the 2 months that it has been out with readers, with bookstores, and people who are part of the literary community. And I hope it continues to remain relevant, ignites conversations. It all started with a phone call. I'm very glad you took that phone call when I asked Poonam to consider doing a book on electoral bonds and the beast that is the Indian general election. Of course, we are a nation that keeps going into election mode at least once or twice in any given year. Sometimes it's more than 2 elections in a year. And the sheer scale of putting an election together, running an election, the behind the scenes, the electoral strategies, the electoral war rooms, all of this, and the muck and the dirt of that also comes in an electoral democracy. Poonam is able to weave in this brilliant, brilliant narrative. When Poonam first began reporting on the electoral bond story, she had not foreseen that kernel of an idea, her investigative work, investigative journalism being now a dying breed, would imminently then go on to make history in what would become one of the most landmark Supreme Court judgments that struck down the electoral bond scheme. And of course, that was only the beginning of the can of worms that she managed to open later to really understand the electoral sort of democracy processes and functions and structures. And she asks us a very provocative question, whether under all this is really a rot that has set in, and whether it's too late to set back this rot or repair it or heal from that rot. So perhaps that's where we start. What are the learnings you sort of had in the process of writing the book, thinking about the structure, etc.? What are the truths you discovered? Is there a rot really that's set in underneath?
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining me for this event. I'm really grateful to all of you to come here, to my panelists, and I'm really thankful for the fact that Bloomsbury agreed to publish this book. You'll be surprised. I got this feedback from a person whom I met for the first time, and this was someone whom I didn't know but bumped into him somewhere, and he said that I have read your book, and you know what? It takes a lot of guts to write this book, and even more to get it published. That was an honest feedback coming from a stranger, and I feel I'm really thankful to Bloomsbury and Chirag for publishing this book, because we are living in an era where we really have to think multiple times. In even speaking truth has become a bit of a problem. Let's accept it. Freedom of speech has become a problem. Accept it. Writing social media post has become very difficult. Writing a book like this, can you imagine how difficult can it be? But having said that, I must say that when I sat down writing for this particular book, multiple things were coming in my mind, but not for a moment I thought that I should not write this. The only thing which I wanted was a legal vetting, which I have done ever since I have started my journalistic career, which is important. But apart from that, I never thought that, what if I write this, I'll be trolled? What if I write this, I'll be, targeted? That was not there in my mind, because it was like there's a saying, hai na, jo hoga dekha jayega types. So I was in that situation when I was writing this book. But yes, a lot I have written, a lot I want to write also in future. But what I'm slightly surprised is that these days people ask me, are you not scared? I say, why should I be scared in telling the truth? So this is what I would say, that a journalist should not be asked, are you scared in telling the truth? Rather, a journalist should be asked, why aren't you telling the truth? That is the right question to be asked, and they should be called out if they're not telling the truth. Unfortunately, journalists who are speaking truth or reporting factually correct reports, they are being trolled. I would like to mention News Laundry petition just 2 days ago. Shameful. And I'm really happy that they took step and High Court came up with a good order. So the point here I'm trying to make is that it's just not them, or most of us have been trolled. Some of my journalist friends are here, they've been trolled, I've been trolled. So writing a book is a documentation of your journey, and this is part of me. This is just not my journalistic work, it's part of me. So I was very happy when Chirag approached me for this book, and it was like I was in seventh heaven, to be very honest.
But has there been a rot that set in which is irreversible? In writing this book, have you discovered that there's a rot to the structure, the electoral structure process, that is so far deep that it's not possible to reverse that?
I'm a very much an optimistic person. It's just that we don't want to change things. There's no rot that cannot be removed. The system is in problem. The system needs to work on that. And we need to raise voice. We need to say what is wrong, and we need to speak out loud enough for the system to hear. So when we know that there is a rot, we accept it and we work towards it. So I don't think so it is deep-seated somewhere that we cannot remove it.
I like this note of optimism to start on, and now that we've heard from the author and before I have the other speakers come in, perhaps we take a moment to formally unveil the book before we get into the discussion.
Sorry.
I want to bring in Mr. Lavasa, who's, of course, very kindly agreed to be part of this evening's chat. As somebody who's walked the power corridors, do you see the Election Commission of today as institutionally constrained, compromise and complicit. Just walk us through how you look at the ECI today, having served as one of the commissioners.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me compliment Poonam for writing this book. It's certainly a courageous enterprise, but at the same time, I think it's well researched, and she has taken a lot of pains to not only find out various details, but she has also launched a series of programs to educate people about the entire business of funding of elections and political parties. So kudos to her. On the specific question, I think to say that Election Commission is complicit is being too harsh. To say that it is constrained, I think is nearer the reality, because you need to understand what those constraints are. Some of those constraints could be what the system has introduced, in the sense that there could be deficiency in law, there could be some provisions which they want but which they don't exist. The other could be their own perception of their role. The third could be self-imposed restraints by individuals on themselves. Now, there could be various reasons why individuals impose restraint on themselves. But I think a very important factor which we should not ignore is, it was said that it's difficult to speak the truth. I think it has always been difficult to speak the truth. Because what they say about speaking the truth is that it takes two persons, one to speak, the other to hear. So I think the number of people who are comfortable with hearing the truth is going down. And therefore, it seems that speaking the truth is becoming more and more difficult. That having said, I think the dilemma also is that the Election Commission tries to operate within the boundaries which the law has prescribed. It's not the only organ created by law. There are other organs which have their role. But the paradox is that whereas Election Commission likes to operate within the boundaries, the courts have held that Article 324 is a reservoir of power available. And somehow people have this expectation that during the process of elections, because of the power of superintendence that Election Commission has, it will dip into that authority and try and solve all conceivable, inconceivable problems which exist. So I think the expectation is very, very high. Now, no doubt, it's a referee. Election Commission is a referee and it has to play its part according to the rules. There could be rules which have constraints, so it will be constrained in discharging its obligation. But at the same time, when you have a game, people play the game to win the game, but they don't play the game necessarily to win it by means foul or fair, or foul and fair. So if you have political parties who are the primary players in the game wanting to take on the regulatory authority, then there is a problem. Because then it will require not an ordinary election commission, but a very courageous election commission. So I think that is something which we need to recognize. I'll stop just by reminding a lot of you who might have heard that Sir Grace, when he was invited by his village, the famous cricketer, when he was invited by his village to play an exhibition match, and unfortunately he got out on the first ball and the umpire gave him out. So he walked up to the umpire and he said, "You think they've come to see your umpiring?" So, but people want to see a good umpiring as far as the Election Commission is concerned.
Lovely note, lovely image you've given us to think of the ECI. I want to bring in Ms. Bhardwaj here and respond also with first thoughts on Poonam's book itself, but also as a transparency activist. Do you feel like India's public institutions protect its citizens, its voters, or do they protect those in power more? I just also want to attach another question to this question, is whether we've also come to accept this sort of muddiness and electoral opacity around processes and structures in the running of elections as the new norm.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. And I do want to start by congratulating Poonam and, of course, Bloomsbury.
Thank you.
Poonam is a journalist who's always shown truth to power. So I think this book is very special because it documents some of the very, very important challenges in our times. And I'm really glad that this was published, Poonam. So congratulations to you. On the institution question, I think, like Mr. Lavasa said, the Election Commission, we do have a lot of expectations of. It is responsible for ensuring that there are free and fair elections in our country. And I think, by and large, the role that the Election Commission has played has been seen to be conducting free and fair elections. Unfortunately, the last few elections, the cycles have raised some very serious concerns. And I would like to say that the Election Commission has seemed to be wanting in terms of its response. There have been concerns of selective action on complaints that have been made. We would like action by the referee against anyone who is flouting the Model Code of Conduct, for example, the ruling party and the opposition parties. But we've been seeing regularly in elections that when there is a complaint against the opposition, there's action with great alacrity. But if there are similar or maybe sometimes even more grave complaints against the ruling party, that's not been happening. I think the question that has also come up in the recent past is very clearly on who is being appointed an election commissioner. And the matter, of course, went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that because it's a referee, it should not look like there's a preponderance of any one political party, even if it's the ruling party, which is seen to be selecting the election commissioners. And therefore, they said a balanced committee of the Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India should select election commissioners. And we saw that very quickly after that, the government brought in a bill, and which became law, where the Chief Justice was replaced by one of the ministers, Union Cabinet ministers. So we again have a preponderance of the ruling party. And in that situation, when we see selective action, where the Election Commission is not seen to be acting with adequate urgency against members of the ruling party when they are violating or their alleged violations of the Model Code of Conduct, I think that raises very serious question in any democracy. I think in terms of transparency, there has been a huge problem because there seemed to be an understanding that elections are being held for political parties. In a democracy, elections are not held for political parties, they're held for citizens, for them to elect people who they want to represent them. And even on something as basic as the voter turnout, for example, when people have asked for Form 17C, for example, where they want to know how many people went out and voted in each booth in the country, the Election Commission has just flatly refused to give that information, and the copies of Form 17C. Of course, we heard a very eloquent press conference where there was a lot of shero-shairi and we were told that there's nothing to worry about. But in the absence of very, very objective data, and Form 17C is really the one document, statutory document, that tells us what the voter turnout is. We are still to see a copy of Form 17C of the 2024 general elections. In Delhi, we've filed RTI applications and under the conduct of election rules for copies of Form 17C. They've been denied to us flatly. And I think that this really is a cause for concern because we are repeatedly told that Form 17C will be given to the candidates or rather their polling agents, not to citizens. And that the underlying thing there is that elections are for the candidates or for the political parties, which is totally untrue. So I think that institutions like the Election Commission really need to step up and understand that if there are questions, then the only way to ensure public trust is if there is transparency, if they are working in an accountable manner, and people see them not only as being fair, but also they're seen to be fair. That's very important. So I'll stop here and Chirag will take it.
Thank you so much. I want to bring in Professor Chokar here. Much of the work and much of the victory with the Supreme Court judgment on electoral bonds actually belongs to you and the work that ADR did in championing transparency, in championing accountability. Walk us through the oral history of what it takes to arrive at such a verdict. What is the kind of back-breaking work it really takes for us to be sitting here and talk about a judgment like that?
Well, if I were to walk you through it, it will take a long time. Several years.
A condensed version, perhaps.
Yeah. At my age, you walk slowly, you know. Anyway, Poonam, congratulations. And I have said this before to you, so just to say this publicly, wonderful work. The electoral bonds issue started the day electoral bonds were announced by the then finance minister. Because as I have written hundreds of times, in the morning there was this budget speech in which he said there was a section in his speech called Transparency in Electoral Funding, which is 2 paragraphs in that section. And in the afternoon, in a media interaction which was published in the Indian Express that I read, he said the electoral bonds will be in the nature of bearer bonds. The identity of the donor will be anonymous. So this word, that transparency will be brought through anonymity, has stayed with me since then. And I have played on it many times with great effect, as it is happening now. So we filed a petition. The petition was not heard properly. There were a couple of hearings where the Chief Justices did not understand the issue. There were 2 interim orders. Both were inappropriate, if I may say so. With due apologies, sir. Okay. This is more interesting. Justice Lokur says they understood the issue. Therefore, the orders were... Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, then finally...
Come in for a minute. They didn't want to understand it.
Sir, I don't question judges. So the judgment was reserved in November. It could have been announced any time after that, but it was announced a few days before the election, and people thought it was all, a grand scheme to hurt one political party and help other political parties. But if there was a grand scheme, we were not aware of it. So the judgment came, it was celebrated, and Poonam has written in great detail about it, so I don't need to walk you through it. I just sort of skim through it. But then the State Bank of India decided that it also has to play a role. So, and then things happened, and therefore the matters had to come out. So a lot of information came out, and the fact that there is a corporate political nexus was established beyond doubt. I think, in retrospect, that judgment did not do anything more than this. It could have done a lot more. 2 petitions were filed to pursue further, but as I said, the Honorable Supreme Court declined to hear them. So therefore the matters didn't go any further. But a lot could have been done, but one should be grateful for small mercies. What it takes is sheer dogmatism, lage raho, besharmi se. You are repeatedly told directly and indirectly that what the hell are you doing? And it is told to you by well-meaning friends. Friends who've been friends for 60 years. and they genuinely say कि छोड़ो यार ये कुछ नहीं होने वाला है, but बत्रा साहब हंस रहे हैं, इनका तो और बुरा हाल है. So it takes sheer doggedness and being at it ad nauseum, which we've been doing, and I think that's all I can say about electoral bonds. Thank you.
I want to bring in Justice Lokur here. It's now been what, a year and a few months over that since we've had this sort of landmark judgment. But of course, we've seen the Supreme Court be this sort of pendulum where it gives you a little, takes away some. On a good day, if the flavor of the month is, it's feeling very kind towards constitutional promises, it's going to give us some of that. And on other days, it's not. How do you assess, if there is been a loss of faith from the judiciary today, how do you assess the judiciary of today?
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. First of all, congratulations, Poonam. It's been an excellent work and much needed. The second thing that I would like to say is that, I feel like an unconstitutional electoral bond in this panel. But anyway, here I am, and so were the electoral bonds. The thing about the Supreme Court and the judgment, really, is that the judgment, fell short of what it should have done. They declared the electoral bonds to be unconstitutional. That's fine, good decision. But what should happen after that? I think the Supreme Court did not go far enough. There are two things that could have been done. One is the transparency aspect, which Anjali has spoken about. Just reveal everything. Who are the persons who have given the, who have purchased the electoral bonds, and to whom has it gone? Okay, I think that is one thing that should have been done, but was not done. The second thing is, a follow-up, I think, by the state. You've had persons who have given 1,000 crores, right, towards electoral bonds. Several others have given about 200, 300, 400 crores. Where did they get this money from? To have that kind of white money, it's supposed to be white money. Where did they get this white money from? I think that's a question that should have been asked by the Supreme Court. And then, the flavor of the month now seems to be to set up some kind of an SIT for everything. Perhaps at that point of time, an SIT should have been set up to find out what's going on. So yes, you have this swing of the pendulum, so to speak, where sometimes you get very good judgments, but sometimes the Supreme Court does not live up to expectations. Article 370, of course, is one such judgment where they stopped short of going the whole hog. Electoral bonds is another judgment where they stopped short of going the whole hog. But I think all in all, there was a time when, the Supreme Court was swinging only one particular way. And that led to a loss of faith or a loss of credibility among the people, among several persons, including members of the legal fraternity. But I think, things are swinging back, all right? And I'm fairly hopeful that maybe in the next couple of months, things will improve. I just want to go back to the emergency, when the ADM Jabalpur judgment came out. Even today, they say that was, the worst thing that could have ever happened to the Supreme Court. But after the emergency, it bounced back. And, we had a lot of good, interesting developments, public interest litigation, lok adalats, free legal aid, and so on and so forth. So I think that resilience is there. The Supreme Court is capable of bouncing back from what it was, a couple of years ago. And I'm fairly optimistic that things will definitely improve. I think in the last couple of weeks, judges of the Supreme Court have made it pretty clear that the Constitution of India is supreme. Now, once that is accepted, that the Constitution of India is supreme, I think things will, fall in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the note
I-
of hope. Please.
I want to interject to say one thing which I thought Justice Lokur would say, because he has said it many times on many contexts. The Electoral Bond Judgement, as I was hoping he would put it, operation successful but the patient is dead. This is one of his favorite phrases as far as I know.
Thank you. Now to the only politician on the panel who has very kindly agreed to field our questions. And I will say this on record, we did try to have somebody from the BJP on the panel. They were too busy to be available this evening. But to Mr. Khera, nearly all parties, right? Nearly all parties, with the exception of CPIM, if I'm not mistaken, benefited, right? Benefited from the electoral bond scheme. And from the sort of opacity in campaign finance, that period in which the bonds were very much being bought and sold. What has been the opposition's position on campaign finance, and broadly thoughts on the kind of electoral reforms we really need in India right
First
now?
of all, I wish you had an empty chair for the BJP. Let people realize time and again when they look at the empty chair. And I hope, because I'm the only politician sitting here, all the brickbats should not come my way. Because we were not
will try.
responsible for any of the mess that you are discussing. When you say that the opposition, in particular my party, also benefited from electoral bonds, what did you expect us to do? Boycott taking money from for our elections? No, that's not possible. So if there is a law of the land, and the law also was passed through the money bill route, it was very strange the way the law got passed. So obviously we were opposed to it. As a principle, we have been completely opposed to this electoral bond thing, and we've been voicing our opposition also. But when the law came into being, obviously all political parties, that was the only route to take money. Unless you wanted the Congress party to take in cash quietly and ignore the electoral bond route. So yes, all parties benefited because that was the law of the land. And now that the law has changed, a lot of reforms are required, and even that law, I am not very happy when you use the word benefited, because even that law was absolutely unfair to the opposition. It had a lot of opacity for the opposition. Now, I am sure we are told that there was a number, a concealed number on electoral bonds. So the access to information on who is the donor was with SBI and with the government. Well, and there are reports, the investigative journalists like my friend Poonam here. I must tell you a side story. When she was at the Times Now, and I saved her number as Times Now Poonam Agarwal. That means that you don't have to take the call, And now I'll have to change because
So just to correct, I left
I
Times
know
Now
that,
before
I know that.
2014.
But that fear and that haunting still continues. So
Some sane years, no?
yeah, she is sane. Yes, you're right.
Not he, not her.
Times Now. Well, let's not discuss that because there are other rivals here. So there were investigations about the ED and the agencies going to a particular company as a warning shot. Then the electoral bonds happen. The political party, the ruling party gets the money, and the ED backs off. Now, Congress was not in power. So, benefited is a wrong word to use for any other party other than the BJP. They had control of the ED. They still have control of the ED. They have control of the CBI, income tax, all other agencies, and the media also. So, everything you let loose on a company and then get electoral bond money through electoral bonds. So that's an unfair advantage that the BJP had. No political party, whether it's the Congress or the BJP, should get that kind of unfair advantage in a healthy democracy. That's what Congress stands for.
And what are the kind of electoral reforms we need
Well,
in this
for that, you have Professor Chokar, you have Anjali, you have all experts. I don't think any suggestion from the opposition would be acceptable to the civil society. Not realizing that the Congress party is the only voice, national voice of all the liberal constitutional values all of you are struggling to fight for. Yet, all the brickbats come on us. Poonam was discussing over a cup of tea about an hour ago. And you know, civil society is working better now. Well, I said I absolutely disagree with you. During UPA era, the civil society, I mean, the result of the civil society activism was the Anna movement. And the nation wants to know your boss. Now, show me one primetime debate against Narendra Modi. Show me one. Show me one Anna Hazare kind of movement. Show me one channel that stood for the farmers' movement here. So don't compare. There is no civil society now. I'm sorry, there is no media now. So I hope you guys are missing the UPA era.
Thank you. But to that provocation, Professor Chokar and Anjali, if you want to sort of see whether civil society is dead or is this a premature obituary for this for civil society?
It's in the ICU.
Okay, Professor Chokar, please.
No, a couple of things.
Sir, I'm from the Congress, not the BJP.
I don't know. Wait till you hear. I have seen Mr. Khera's offense being the best form of defense in his press conferences, because I do not watch television, so I don't know what he does on television. But in his press conferences, I have seen his offense being the best form of defense, and he's exactly doing that, which is perfectly fine. On the matters of what the Congress did on the electoral bond issue, we also have Professor Gowda here, who knows a lot more about it than anybody else, and I wish he were explaining that and not me. The point is that I have heard it being said many times that the Congress opposed it in the Parliament. But the opposition of the Congress in Parliament was not effective. It did not have, there was no passion in that opposition. It was opposition for the sake of opposition. And when Mr. Khera says that what did you expect, to take money in cash, that was the only way of taking money, I'm afraid, sir, I disagree. There were many other ways of taking money, including through normal check or electronic transfer. So cash and electoral bonds were not the only two options. Number 3, there was a party, I am not a fan of CPM for a variety of other reasons, who did not take money and who went to court. What prevented the Congress from going to court? This to say that it was the law of the land, if you feel that the law of the land is wrong, which you perhaps may or may not have felt, I felt that. If you feel there is a wrong law, should I take advantage of that law and then use that as a justification?
Okay.
I find it a little incongruous, and there are many other things which I could. Civil society is dead, yes. What are we doing here? Is this dead? Is this book dead? No. Civil society is dead. Thank you very much. Let us maintain a 2-minute silence and then go home.
Quick
Civil
rebuttal.
society, sir, is not dead. Civil society was working when your group was in power, and I am afraid your group was not much better. It was marginally better, but not much better. We know what happened. We fought the criminalization affidavits case when the UPA was in power, and it was opposed tooth and nail. So let us not be holier than thou. We respect politicians. They are necessary.
Necessary evil, sir.
No, they are not necessary evil. I deliberately said they are necessary, and you added the evil. They are necessary, but we will make them useful. It is our job as citizens to make them useful.
Mr. Khera, you want to?
No, he wants to.
Okay.
Come and then I'll.
And I also want Ms. Bhardwaj to come in.
This is not a brick bag. No, I thought since tempers were rising, so I was suddenly reminded of a passage which I read, and if you allow me, I'll read it out, and I'll leave it for all of you to guess who's the author of this passage. My tour was especially concerned with the general elections all over India that were approaching. But I did not take kindly to the usual methods and devices that accompany electioneering. Elections were an essential and inseparable part of the democratic process, and there was no way of doing away with them. Yet, often enough, elections brought out the evil side of man. And it was obvious that they did not always lead to the success of the better man. Sensitive persons and those who were not prepared to adopt rough and ready methods to push themselves forward were at a disadvantage and preferred to avoid these contests. Was democracy then to be a close preserve of those possessing thick skins and loud voices and accommodating consciences? Unquote.
अंजलि जी आप भी कुछ
And this is Jawaharlal Nehru writing in the Discovery of India.
I think the simple point is that we do want to hold the opposition to a certain standard, and we hope that when there is a strong opposition, it will not fall in line, and when there is an instrument like the electoral bonds, they will stand up and say and set themselves apart and say, we are not going to do this. It should have been only the ruling party then which said we will accept electoral bonds. We would have very much liked, as civil society, as citizens of the country who are very concerned about the health of our democracy, that opposition parties as a whole would have isolated the ruling party and said, we are not in this. There might be an instrument. We will use other instruments which are more moral, more ethical, and that's how we had hoped. And we've had these discussions not just privately, but also publicly, in public meetings with political parties. Professor Gowda is here, Mr. Khera, you are here, many other political parties as well, where people have put this thought across, where the idea was that this should be shunned, an instrument like electoral bonds.
So, may I? Sure.
I want to supplement what Anjali has said. We want to hold all political parties to a certain standard, not only the opposition. And I am speaking of a situation where the current party in power is not in power, because we have seen that. And no political party is free of blame. What you just said, that we wanted all opposition parties, this all or none is a great phenomenon. कोई दूसरा नहीं कर रहा है तो मैं कैसे करूं? तो कोई भी नहीं कर रहा. सीपीएम ने करा, लेकिन औरों ने नहीं करा ना. सब कहते हैं कि भाई पहले दूसरे करेंगे फिर हम करेंगे, क्योंकि वो नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम नहीं कर रहे हैं. बड़ी अच्छी बात है, कोई भी नहीं कर रहा है. Therefore, I really hold all political parties guilty of, well, let me not use very strong words, at least no political party, in my opinion, is internally democratic, regardless of how they hold elections, how they choose their presidents, etc., etc. Not one party is democratic. And the subtitle of this book is Elections in the World's Largest Democracy. We have a democracy which is upheld by pillars which are totally non-democratic. And then everybody wants to go to town saying, we are protecting democracy. Opposition is protecting democracy. Ruling party, of course, is the mother of all democracies. I only wanted to correct this, that we don't want to hold only the opposition to expectations.
Thank you,
we
Professor
want to hold everybody to expectations.
Thank you. Since I'm in the minority, now you know what minorities go through in this country. Professor Saab was able to measure the passion in the parliament with which we opposed it. So likewise, please allow me to measure the effectiveness of the civil society under the Modi years.
Oh, भैया civil society is dead, मान लिया.
बोलने दीजिए.
मरे हुआ को क्यों मार रहे हो?
बोलने दीजिए सर. हमारे वक्त, नहीं मैं बत्रा साहब, हमारे वक्त सिविल सोसाइटी का एक आतंक था. 26/11 होता है, हमारे गृह मंत्री इस्तीफा दे देते हैं. अकाउंटेबिलिटी की मैं आपको बात कह रहा हूँ, मेजरमेंट ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी, मेजरमेंट ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिवनेस टू our sensitivity towards the media. We have shown a lot of sensitivity. Please don't compare us with those who are not here. आज पहलगाम, पुलवामा कौन जवाब दे रहा है आपको, और आप कहां से जवाब ले पा रहे हैं, जरा मुझे ये बताइए. I am not saying that civil society is not working. Their working environment has become more difficult because there is no media to support them. Nation with Anna, her channel, her ex channel. You know, every evening, Nation with Anna. शीला दीक्षित जवाब दो, मनमोहन सिंह मौन क्यों है, कहीं दिखता है आपको? सिविल सोसाइटी पैम्पर्ड थी हमारे वक्त, माफ कीजिएगा छोकर साहब. आज की सिविल सोसाइटी को कठिनाई सिर्फ ये है, आपने हमें बुलाया, हम आ गए. बुला के दिखाइए बीजेपी को. मैं 1 घंटा और बैठता हूं, चुनौती देता हूं, आप बीजेपी को बुला के दिखाइए. That's the kind of responsiveness we had towards the civil society, we have towards the civil. NSE, the greatest example of active participation of civil society in policy making. How can you compare us with them? I'm sorry. और तो कोई जवाब नहीं देना मुझे किसी का.
Asha, lots of ignited passion here.
We need to come back to
Yes, we need to come back to Poonam, whose special evening this is. Mudslinging to chalti rahegi. I have obviously a lot of questions that I'd love to ask the panel, but I want to open it up to all of you. But before I do that, I just want to remark that if you believe civil society is not dead and the media is not dead, support independent media and support independent journalists. Buy a copy of the book. It's right outside. Ask a discount from your bookseller and get your favorite author to sign the book for you. Now to questions from the audience. We want questions only. We do not want long comments. Please try to keep them brief and also indicate who your question is for and what your name is. Do we have? Yeah, thank you.
Please introduce yourself because there are many journalists here. We can't hear you.
No, your mic is not working.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Aishwarya, and I'm a journalist, and I had the pleasure of working in a newsroom with Poonam as her junior. And I think the point, getting to it, Chirag, is to get to the way you got to this book. Because I remember there being a flutter at the Quint office when you decided to use this, to take this bond and go to a lab and actually check if it had, you know, like a chip or not, something that nobody on this panel has spoken about. So tell us about that. How did you, what was that process as an investigative journalist to understand ki, this was interesting, and like bring this book to us eventually so many years later?
Thank you, Ash. So Aishwarya is my colleague and a friend, both. So you know everything, and I would request people, if you want a detail, in details you want to know, then please buy the book. I have written it in details rather than talking about it, because, you know, writing a book is one thing, promoting is another thing. I'll be very honest. Chirag is here, he gives me targets, and just targets. But since you have asked, I'll just say this much, is that curiosity is what driven me to this. It was just, I just couldn't take this thing, and maybe Pawan sir will be happy to hear this, that this government is so honest. They're actually keeping the donor's name anonymous. I was a bit, you know, taken aback by the body language of the bankers who sold the bond to me, and that was like, you know, a trigger for me, that how is it happening? Why are they so suspicious about a person who's coming to buy? Why so many questions? And I'm just there to buy a bond for $1,000. You know, those kind of body language and behavior. And this profession has taught me to read body language a bit. So you can also give some credit to my intuition or sixth sense. So that was the thing that, you know, made me go to the forensics, and I said, let's try that as well. Because the bond is very plain, it's just like an A4 size paper, nobody would know. And secondly, of course, the government, like, you know, we are always suspicious about what they do. So yes, that was the second factor.
No, let me answer part of your question. Read page 37 to 46 of the book.
Thank
You
you.
will find a blow-to-blow account in page 37 to 46.
Okay, you had a question?
नमस्ते आप सब जो लोग स्टेज पे बैठे हो सबको नमस्ते इट वाज वेरी नाइस टू हियर ऑल ऑफ यू बहुत पैशनेटली सबके व्यूज़ ओपिनियंस थे इट वाज रियली नाइस टू हियर ऑल ऑफ यू मैंने थोड़ा थोड़ा आप सबके बारे में पढ़ा था बिफोर आई केम हियर आई वुड रियली लाइक टू विश ऑल ऑफ यू गुड विशेस एंड गुड लक फॉर योर जर्नीज अहेड थैंक यू
Thank
सो
you.
मच
Thank you. Yes, there's a question there. The person in yellow. Mustard.
Thank you. Hello everyone. So I am straight to my question. I have lots of questions, but it's very hard to choose one. Why do we often see politicians with criminal records still getting tickets from major parties? What role can youth play in challenging this? I am a student in Delhi University. My name is Nikita. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Mr. Khera, do you want to take
Why
that?
should I?
Ms. Bhardwaj, do you want to take it on? Why do we see such a large number of people with criminal records get tickets?
Well, I will be a little less than polite.
You can be harsh. I can take it.
I am not. I have no reason to be harsh with you. I am only saying, and Mr. Khera, please don't misunderstand. This is partly fun.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Khera's response, "Why should I?" answers your question. Because political parties do not care about this. They don't even feel like answering this.
अब मैं जवाब दूं?
नहीं, अभी मैं दे रहा हूँ.
अब मौका जा
आपने तो
चुका
दे
है
लिया. आपको पहले मौका मिला था.
मैं पहले आपको भी सुनना चाहता था.
अरे ठीक है यार. Political parties do not consider elections as a process to choose people's representatives. Political parties themselves are not interested, and I am saying this with full sense of responsibility, in the welfare of the nation and welfare of the people. They are only interested in staying in power. और अगर इलेक्शन जीतने के लिए उनको कुछ गलत काम भी करने पड़ते हैं तो कोई हर्ज नहीं. ये टिकट देना क्रिमिनल लोगों को, मैं 25 साल से ये काम कर रहा हूँ. जब हमने देखा कि पहले बाद 25 से 30% हो गया, 30 से 36 हो गया, 36 से 42 हो गया, 42 से 48 हो गया है, हम तो जो कर रहे हैं उसका उल्टा असर हो रहा है. हमको तो अपनी दुकान बंद कर देनी चाहिए. लेकिन बिकॉज पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज फील दैट विनिंग इलेक्शंस इज देयर ऑब्जेक्टिव फंक्शन. ये Mr. Lavasa has written in his foreword that elections are a festival of democracy. This is the problem. Elections are not a festival like Diwali, Holi, Ramzan, Falana Dimka जो आते रहते हैं जाते रहते हैं, Christmas. Elections are a fundamental action to choose the destiny of this nation. Political parties have taught us कि 5 साल में 15 दिन आप इलेक्शन के बारे में सोचिए, उसके बारे में मत सोचिए, अपना काम करिए. कोशिश तो ये हो रही है कि 5 साल के बाद भी ना सोचे. सो आई ब्लेम ऑल पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज बिकॉज ये सब में बराबर मामला है. हम तो 20 साल से यही काम कर रहे हैं. सो ऑल पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज, एवरीबडी इज इनोसेंट टिल प्रूव्ड गिल्टी. ठीक है. अब वो पॉलिटिकल ऑफेंसेस हैं, फ्रिवलेस केसेस हैं. अरे सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा है कि जिन केसेस में चार्जेस फ्रेम हुए हैं वो डिक्लेयर करने. अच्छा, फ्रिवलेस केसेस नहीं गिनने, पॉलिटिकल केसेस नहीं गिनने, प्लीज अमेंड द इंडियन पीनल कोड, मेक ए सेपरेट सेक्शन. वो कौन करेगा? आप नहीं कर सकती, मैं भी नहीं कर सकता. वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टियां अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स के थ्रू पार्लियामेंट में कर सकती हैं, लेकिन पार्लियामेंट में तो 48% महानुभाव हैं, कैसे होगा?
Okay, we'll take a
नहीं बोलना जरूरी है।
quick rebuttal then. हाँ.
ऑर्डिनेंस फाड़ने का आरोप राहुल गांधी पर लगता है। क्या था वो ऑर्डिनेंस? फाड़ा नहीं था वैसे उन्होंने। क्या था वो ऑर्डिनेंस? क्रिमिनल्स को इलेक्शन नहीं लड़ने दें। कितनी सिविल सोसाइटी आज हमारे डिफेंस में अर्नब के शो पे जाती है, कहती हैं राहुल गांधी ने ठीक किया था, कोई नहीं बोलता। आप
अरे अर्नब बुलाता ही नहीं है तो कैसे जाएंगे?
तो देखिए हमारे वक्त बुलाता था, अब इनके वक्त बुलाता भी नहीं आपको। अर्नब तक नहीं बुलाता, ये हालत हो गई सिविल
अच्छा, ठीक है,
सोसाइटी।
we'll take more questions now. The person in indigo in the front row, where's the mic? The mic is...
जी हाँ, मैं आपको जानता हूँ।
अच्छा, इन्हें माइक दे दीजिए प्लीज।
माइक प्लीज।
सर, we'll come back to you. We'll come to you right after.
I don't know if this is a question or, but it's a question of my understanding of the thing, but we do continue to vote for criminals. I mean, you call it civil society, you call it common people like me. Why do we still vote for them? Because in any community, and we do have caste-based voting, अगर उस कास्ट में एक बिजनेसमैन है, एक कोई एकेडमिक है और 4 लोग हैं, मगर अगर वहाँ क्रिमिनल है तो जाके उस क्रिमिनल को ही वोट मिलते हैं. That is the important thing. And even educated people, all of us will vote for criminals. Why do we not say, I am not going to vote for a criminal? Even if that is the only thing. Because I've been fighting this at a very personal level. And Poonam has been in the fight from day one with us. So that's what I'm saying, कि हमको अपने आप से पूछना है. Political parties तो देंगी उनको टिकट, उनको आप नहीं रोक सकते, तुम करते हो तो मैं भी करूँगी, बट हम वोट क्यों देते हैं? इसका क्या आंसर है हम सबके पास?
Thank you, ma'am. To the gentleman in the second row. Yeah.
नीलम जी, आंसर अब मैं बाद में दूंगा क्योंकि इस वक्त कम है. I'll talk to you.
शोकर साहब, आपकी बहुत बात सुन के मज़ा आया, लेकिन सवाल कुछ और है. आपने बहुत काम किया, उसमें दो राय नहीं है, हम सब अप्रिशिएट करते हैं. मैं सवाल ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि एक किताब लिखी गई थी, जेम्स माइकल लिंगडो ने लिखी थी. जिगरे वाला चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर था, गुजरात दौरा करने गया था, इलेक्शन करवाना चाहता था, कुछ लोग टालना चाहते थे, कुछ बदलना चाहते थे. हेडलाइन छपी अखबार में, जेम्स माइकल लिंगडो, प्रेशर नंबर 1. उनकी रिलीजियस आइडेंटिटी इंगित की गई. फिर उन्होंने एक किताब लिखी. उस किताब में उन्होंने बताया, ब्यौरा दिया, शायद यहाँ बैठे कुछ लोगों को याद है कि नहीं याद है, कि किस तरह एक महानुभाव जो बाद में बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट हो गए, उन्होंने जाके उनको इनडायरेक्टली कुछ वार्निंग दी, कुछ करने का अनुग्रह किया, लेकिन वो लिपटा हुआ वार्निंग में था.
Sir, may I ask you to get to your question, sir?
Sir, this is, I'm giving you a context.
Yes.
About the chief election commissioner. In my memory, in recent memory, he's the only one who's done a book.
And your question is?
My question is about the institutions.
Who is it for?
Please, yeah, I'm just. You take the mic back, yeah. I mean, you don't
Sir, we have a lot of people waiting, so we want everyone heard, please.
I'm saying that my context is that the institutions have been weakened grossly. Institutions who can fight for my rights as a citizen. Supreme Court, Election Commission, National Human Rights Commission. I'm surprised National Human Rights Commission woke up in this news laundry case. The point is that popular democracy cannot survive or cannot flourish without institutional democracy, which has been weakened across the board, including the Supreme Court, which has been lately giving half judgments. So my question is to whoever wants to answer, what is the solution? Where do you start from?
Perhaps Ms. Bhardwaj wants to take this?
No, I think it's absolutely correct that institutions in any democracy have a very, very important role to play. I mean, we were discussing earlier also, Chirag, that what happens when the Supreme Court even gives a direction and then it's not followed through. Now, the reality is that we are seeing a very systematic undermining of institutions, and it is happening in both ways. One is that there is a very strong influence which is coming from those in power, where the process of selection, the process of removal, laws are being tampered with, where the institutions themselves are not being allowed to function in an independent manner. Where there is an attempt by institutions to function in an independent manner, appointments are just not being made. So we have so many important institutions where we are just struggling in the courts to say, at least make appointments. What's going to happen to our fundamental rights? I mean, I work on the right to information. Information commissions in the country have been lying shut, many of them, because just appointments are not being made. We've seen in very important commissions like the NHRC, the Election Commission also, where appointments haven't been made, the Judiciary, where that hasn't happened. The way signals are given out, where removals happen overnight when politically sensitive cases come up, whether it is the CBI or other institutions. So what we are seeing is a very, very significant undermining of institutions that cannot be denied. I think as citizens, as civil society, we really need to monitor our institutions as well. Unfortunately, we see that there is only a one-sided pressure on institutions also, where the ruling dispensation is putting a lot of pressure. There has to be an equal and opposite counter pressure at the very least to keep reminding them that they are not here to serve those in power. They're here to serve the people of the country. And we have to constantly engage and find ways to hold them accountable. And I think that as citizens, we need to also step up and do that. But you're absolutely right that in the absence of institutions that are willing to stand up for people's constitutional rights, democracy will really not stand a chance.
Thank you. Mr. Lavasa, you want to add? We'll just have Mr. Lavasa add first and then.
Yeah, I just want to say that, we have talked about weakening of institutions, but I think there is a central question that needs to be asked, that if we are all talking about reforms, electoral reforms, then let's analyze that in the last 18 general elections, which political party has made electoral reforms as a critical component of their manifesto? Very few. So what does it mean? That is it a priority for them? The second question is that why are political parties not in the nature of public entities which are subject to right to information? You have a judgment from the CIC order which has held all political parties to be public entities. That order has not been implemented. Nobody wants to implement that order. And I'm sorry to say that is where let at least one political party come up and say that, yes, I want to be a public entity. I will subject myself to right to information. They're not doing it. And the third important thing which I want to mention is that I think we need to debate on what is the character of a political party in terms of its legal status. It's not a trust. It's not a society. It's not a company. What is it? So there is a need for the law to define what a political party is. That is how it should be entitled to receive funds. Why should political donations be tax-free? Because if they are not used for the purpose of, let's say, elections, which is the central activity in an electoral democracy, political parties could become just a repository of depositing all kinds of money. So where is the justification for allowing tax exemption for political parties to just be receptacle of all kinds of donations?
Thank you, Mr. Lavasa. We'll take 2 to 3 questions.
One question about
Yes, please,
want to
please,
raise the
please.
hand. Sir,
Hold
my
on.
question is to you. So, in fact, you can tag both together. There was there was 2 subsequent petitions after electoral bonds. My name is Vipul Mudgal. I work for Common Cause, and we were co-petitioners with ADR in this electoral bonds petition. So we filed a subsequent petition which was to form an SIT to probe the cases of quid pro quo. Okay? They were very clear cases, very simple, small example, 6 pharmaceutical companies whose drugs failed drug test, basic test of veracity. They paid through electoral bonds to political parties and they got off the hook. You know? So there were cases like this. So there was this petition. I would request all of you to please dig out this petition from commoncause.in website and read it.
Sir, may I ask
It
you?
has at least 50 examples, and my question is
Yes,
coming
thank you.
to Mr.
Lokur,
to
Justice Lokur,
Lokur,
yes.
and to Anjali Bharadwaj, who worked on that petition, that it got dismissed. And sir, on the reason given was that you have remedies available for this. So each electoral bond quid pro quo case, you file a fresh case. So was that fair?
Yeah, thank you, Vipul. There are two things. One is, like I said in the earlier statement, that the judgment fell short, right? The electoral bonds judgment fell short. There is a lot that could have been done, and one of them is what you have suggested. Perhaps the Supreme Court could have ordered the composition of an SIT like they're doing now, to look into some of these issues and see whether there was in fact quid pro quo. That is one thing. The second thing is that with respect to your observations, there are two things. One is delays in deciding cases. That is, I think, causing a huge problem. The Supreme Court is not able to prioritize cases. The electoral bonds case took 7 years for decision. Okay, now I think maybe half a dozen or maybe a dozen elections, including state elections, took place during that period. So there was this unconstitutional act, something that was declared unconstitutional later on, that was going on. Now, it was an important case. The Supreme Court did realize, and I think the Chief Justice at that time did mention that it's an important case. It should be heard early, but it wasn't heard early. So the delay, I think, is something which is causing a lot of anguish amongst everybody in the decision of cases. The second thing which Mr. Lavasa also adverted to is the implementation of the laws. It's not that all laws are unconstitutional, it's not that all laws are bad. There are some laws which are very good, but they are being misinterpreted, misused, abused. All right? Today you've had the Chief Justice of India say that, listen, enough is enough. The Enforcement Directorate has, what are you doing? Kind of a question. So the executive is also to be blamed, right, for faulty implementation or non-implementation or abuse of the laws. So unless we are in a position, first of all, to ensure that the laws are properly implemented, number two, whatever decision has to be taken should be taken quickly. I was just asking Anjali, and it came out from my memory, the challenge to the composition of the Election Commission. That's pending. Why should it remain pending? I mean, if it's constitutionally valid, fine, declare it to be constitutionally valid. If it's unconstitutional, declare it to be unconstitutional. So I think these are the twin problems that we are facing.
You are also being told about the basic features from the chair of one of the houses. And it is fundamentally flawed.
But that's a debate that's been going on for the last 50 years. But the Supreme Court has said, I think, quite clearly that the Constitution is supreme. So I think that debate has to be closed.
Thank you, Justice. You want to add to that?
Just to add to what Justice Lokur said, like he said, we are getting SITs constituted in cases where people are not really wanting them, and in cases where there's a clear need to ensure accountability, it's not happening. So Vipul, the cases that you've mentioned, I mean, in the electoral bonds matter, what the Supreme Court said in a very fabulous judgment was there is a very clear potential for quid pro quo when an instrument like the electoral bond comes. So you have a situation where, by the very nature of the electoral bond, somebody could be giving money and then getting a favor from the ruling party. You know, if they give money to the ruling party, and nobody will know. So we will not know that policies and laws and rules are not being made for us. It is being made for those who are contributing to the ruling party or the parties in question. Now, in a situation like that, when finally as citizens, we had access to information on who is funding which political party. We didn't have all the information, 4,000 crore rupees worth of bonds out of 16,000 crores. We still don't know who funded which political party through electoral bonds. But for 12,000 crores, we did get that information. And one could see the journalists who were hard at work, people like Poonam and others, were able to show us that there is such clear evidence of quid pro quo. There were those allegations. Now, who do you go to? Do you go to a CBI and ED? I mean, you go anywhere and you talk to a common person, they'll tell you that there is a washing machine being run. If somebody is corrupt one day, if, you know, they join the ruling party, then the CBI and the ED just stop investigating into their cases, or they drop those cases. In a situation like that, as citizens, are we expected to go to those very bodies and say, please investigate cases of quid pro quo if they're emerging from electoral bonds? Therefore, there was a demand for an SIT, for an independent, court-monitored SIT to be set up into the electoral bonds revelations. And unfortunately, like Justice Lokur was saying, we actually did not see the court stepping up and taking this whole thing to its logical conclusion, because that was the expectation. Of course, we want transparency. Of course, we want information, and that judgment was seminal. But we don't want information just for the sake of information. People want accountability. Finally, if we want to talk of electoral reforms, if we don't want this rot that we started talking about and started this discussion with, there has to be accountability that is fixed. And political parties have to be held to account. And I think the Supreme Court supremely missed that opportunity.
Thank you. That's all the time we have.
I need 2 minutes.
Okay. A minute, sir.
What Sharmaji said, institutions are not only compromised, institutions have been captured. I have 3 notes here. When the initial questions were asked, Mr. Lavasa talked about the constraints on the ECI. Anjali talked about institutions. And Justice Lokur talked about the Supreme Court swinging from one end to the other and so on. So I noted them down because I wanted to comment on them, but there is no time. Number 2, for the political parties becoming under right to information that Mr. Lavasa mentioned, there is a judgment by the full bench, unanimous judgment by a full bench of the CIC. The case is in the Supreme Court since 2013. It has not been heard. Lastly, legal status of political parties. There is a draft bill prepared by a committee headed by none other than Justice Venkatachalaya to make a law regarding political parties. But nobody, least of all political parties, are interested in that. It has been around for about 15 years now. The question is, what do we do? The answer is in today's Indian Express by Suhash Palshikar. And I will read a bit of that. He says, both within India and globally, the past few decades have witnessed a slant in understanding the idea of democracy mainly through the prism of electoral regularity and formation of governments on the basis of the electoral majorities. Such understanding tends to downplay other factors such as interinstitutional balance, supremacy of the constitution, and above all, public reason that shapes electoral outcomes. Once the idea of the liberal is decoupled from the idea of democracy, democratic, we pave the way for distortion of democracy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I submit, we are not living in a democracy, we are living in a distorted democracy where we think holding elections every few years is democracy. It is not. Institutions have to function, and when I say institutions have been captured, it is not only the problem with the ruling party, it is also the problem with the institutions. Why can't people in institutions resign? They don't. Why can't people who get appointed to institutions at least develop a spine after they are appointed to constitutional positions? That is what used to happen.
Thank you, Professor Chokar. Final word with Mr. Khera for a
Thank
minute,
you.
and we do have to wrap up.
So
We're
all the
overstaying
issues
our
that
welcome.
have been raised here, and I often see these issues, the expectation from the Congress party, and we respect that, because you think Congress party is the only party which got RTI, obviously you have a lot of expectations from us. But the politicization of a society has to be done by civil society, by media, by intellectuals, by writers like her. Media, of course, you know where it is. Therefore, the angst with which we expect the civil society to please politicize the society on these issues. Because otherwise, Modi is busy politicizing the society on mandir, masjid, kaun kya khayega, kaun kya pehnega. So it's therefore, the onus lies with the civil society to put pressure on all of us, and don't just expect कि भाई कांग्रेस पार्टी करेगी सब कुछ. क्यों भाई? हम भी कॉम्पिटिटिव स्पेस में, हमें भी जीतना है. फिर हम हार जाते हैं आपकी सारी बातें मान के, फिर कहते हो साहब ये तो हार जाते हैं, इनके पास तो सीटें नहीं होती, क्या करेंगे? तो सारा रिफॉर्म तो कांग्रेस लाए, और आप फिर कांग्रेस को पॉइंट आउट करो कि साहब ये तो हार जाते हैं. 40 सीटें लाने वाली पार्टी को कहते हैं कि साहब पैशन से नहीं लड़े. बताइए साहब, अब पैशन कहां से? नंबर से आएगी ना. तो नंबर्स आने के लिए हम कॉम्पिटिटिव स्पेस में कुछ तो करेंगे हम भी, या हम क्या सन्यासी बन जाएं, झोला उठा के फकीर की तरह चले जाएं? वो भी नहीं हो सकता. तो प्लीज सिविल सोसाइटी से वही उम्मीद है कि आप हम सब पर प्रेशर बनाइए, डरिए मत मोदी जी से.
Alright, thank you everyone for coming.
अब मुर्दों से भी उम्मीद है.
Poonam is going to be here for a while. Copies of the book are available outside. Buy it, get her to sign it. Ask the people questions you have that remain unanswered. उनको जाने मत दीजिए, आप पूछिए अपने सवाल. But we have to wrap this up. Thank you.